Don't hesitate, just get right to it. Want you every day till my heart stops proving. I'll never need to ask you for a second chance. I know what I need and the pool of you. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Got me visions. When you know, you know, you know. You got me feeling so. Let it go, let it go, let it go. You got me visions. You got me visions. Don't hesitate, just get away. Want you every day till my heart stops moving. I never need to ask you for a second chance. I know what I need and the pool of you. Don't hesitate, just get away. Want you every day. Don't hesitate, just get away. Want you every day. Don't hesitate, just get right to it. Want you every day till my heart stops moving. I'll never need to ask you for a second chance. I know what I need in the palm of my hands.
The question is, Aaron, how do you know I'm not already putting subliminal messages in the music? Did you ever think about that? Probably haven't. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get the show started here. I know I'm about a minute late here, mainly because I was talking to LeJack for a second, but we are going to get the show started. Graveyard is running a little bit late, so we will go on as usual. God, the Dodgers. Again, as I said before, being a Giants fan, and I know I'm going to piss off a lot of the Dodger fans out there, but being a Giants fan, man, I would go Yankees over the Dodgers just for that. Sacrilegious. All right, let's not talk about this. Let's jump right into this. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to start the show.
Distance nerding.
Hey! We already had a viewer leave. As soon as I said it's just Phil, no Graveyard, we're like, all right, when I'm out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is Thursday. It is time for the build. And boy, do we have a fun build to continue. We've got a fun guest here on the show lined up. Again, like I mentioned a second ago, guys, I'm solo dolo until Graveyard gets here. He's running late from work. But we will carry it. We're going to do it. We're going to get this going. So here we go. You are now watching The Build, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get this going. Let's talk about sponsors. Then we're going to jump right into everything as we usually do. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this show is brought to you by the good, wonderful people over at Dubby. And I was not prepared. Dubby. There it is. Dubby is a brand of energy drinks created to help focus concentration reaction time with no jitters or crash. Dubby contains no maltodextrin, no sugars, no fillers, no artificial colors or dyes. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, why? Why should I get Dubby? Why should I drink Dubby over all the things that are out there? It's because of this. Dubby has Neurofactor. Neurofactor is a neurotropic derived from the coffee fruit. Neurofactor helps give your brain focus and clarity, while the 150 milligrams of caffeine and 3 essential B vitamins help you stay alert and energized. Find out more about Dubby at www.dubby.gg and use the code NERDING10 to get 10% off your order. Yes, you guys are correct. I am usually the one that's late to my own show. I got off of work on time today. Graveyard is running late. He will be here. Don't worry. But with that being said, let's jump right into this. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to pull up this here. Today's guest is a historian, screenwriter, producer, filmmaker, documentarian, author, as well as a fellow podcaster. His work has ranged from TV to movies to documentaries and has won numerous awards for his work. On top of that, he has written multiple books and he is considered the authority in his field. And he has 2 successful podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show the wonderfully talented Steve Rubin. Wrong button. My soundboard is all over the place today.
I am impressed with your soundboard. I am a low-tech person. I don't have anybody screaming on my podcast. I don't have one of those giant horns, but it's very cool.
Yeah, no, and there's I bring my own audience, so when the audience isn't cooperating, it's no, he's great. Or when you tell a joke.
I like that. That's great.
And of course, if you do something really dumb, Wilhelm is right there for us. So,
by the way, that sounded like the death of the early police officer in the 1954 movie Them.
Oh,
giant ants. That scream was very familiar to me.
I'm sure it was. The Wilhelm scream, I believe, was from a Western that came out. I want to say it was the 1940s, but it was there was a kill shot that was done. He was I'm trying to remember the movie it was, but he gets killed, and it's his actual scream that has become the universal sound effect for someone dying. In Star Wars.
Can we hear it one more time?
Yeah.
Actually, it's not Chris Drake from Them, because his scream goes on for another 2 or 3 bits as he's consumed by a giant ant, but never mind.
Right. It's a great movie.
Launched my career as a film historian.
Did it?
Yes, I was as a nerdy high school student, thank God. I used to ride my bike up to Hollywood to Larry Edmonds' bookshop, which was kind of a mecca for film buffs. And it still is, by the way. And there was a little magazine on the shelf called Cine Fantastique, which was a very cool magazine. The cover story was on the films of George Pal, and I had seen The Time Machine and War of the Worlds, etc. And so I picked up that magazine, and I began to realize that I might be able to get them an article. So I was working on my first book, which was called Combat Films, American Realism, 1945 to 1970, which ended up selling about 500 copies. Kind of a real specific niche book. But
right.
The guy I was interviewing was a screenwriter named Ted Scherderman. He wrote a World War II movie in 1960 called Hell to Eternity, which was the true story of a guy named Guy Gabaldon. I'm doing a huge tangent here, but I'll get back to them in a second.
No, it's great because I actually had questions on this stuff, so you're getting there ahead of me.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, Guy Gabaldon was kind of a hero of mine because he was raised by Japanese Americans in East LA, and then when they got all shipped to the camps, the internment camps, he went to Saipan and captured 1,100 Japanese single-handedly. It was a crazy story,
That's
and the
intense.
movie was great. It was Jeffrey Hunter. So I was interviewing him. At the end of the interview, he sits there and he says, and this is long before internet, he says, it kind of reminds me of what I did on Them. Now, that was kind of a lightning bolt moment for me because I had no idea he had written Them. And Them was one of those movies I saw back in the 50s that blew me away as a kind of a cool desert science fiction movie.
Right.
So I wrote to Fred Clark, the editor of Cinefantastique, kind of a out of the blue letter. Would you be interested in the writer of Them? And that was my relation. That was the beginning of my career because I became the in-house film historian at Cinefantastique.
Right. And I mean, you went on to do a lot of I was gonna say critiques, but I mean, like
Oh, I did. I did what I called film archaeology, where I literally took a film like The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original, and I found everybody who was living, and I found original behind the scenes production stills that no one had ever seen. And when that article appeared as a cover story, I actually got my first fan letter from, of all people, Leonard Maltin.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, talk about being like a brand new film historian. All of a sudden, you're getting a fan letter from Leonard Maltin, the dean of film historians. So it was very cool. You know, Cinefantastique isn't around anymore. It's been gone for years. But back in the 70s, it was the place to go to learn about how movies were made in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror genres.
Right, because you also, I mean, famously you did critiques on The Day There Stood Still, the original one, Forbidden Planet, War of the Worlds, a couple of different films that are in there. I mean, just some Hallmark, which that's tangenting into something else, but some Hallmark sci-fi films.
Oh, yeah. And I was about to do a big retrospective on The Time Machine when I got hired by United Artists to be the advanced PR guy on the release of the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the Leonard Nimoy, Donald Sutherland remake that Phil Kaufman directed in San Francisco. So, yeah, so I stopped working for CFQ, but I maintained a friendship with Fred over the years. And it was kind of the beginning of my career. And Star Wars had a definite effect on me because the reason I got this job on Invasion of the Body Snatchers is the director, Phil Kaufman, was friends with George Lucas. And George Lucas had sent a guy named Charlie Lippincott around to all the sci-fi conventions a year before Star Wars was released in the summer of '77. And Phil was told pointedly by George to hire somebody to do the same thing. And that somebody turned out to be me.
That's awesome. Just and there's so many stories that we're going to get into here just about like kind of the what is that I want to say, the just craziness that has been your career.
Well, you know, being a nerd, and I take pleasure in using that word, that it opened up so many doors, and all the jobs I've had pretty much in my life have really been a lot of fun for me.
Mhm.
You know, early on and, you know, pre-college, I had the crap jobs. You know, I worked at McDonald's. I worked in a parking lot. I actually I delivered urine samples to the hospital every day for a very good amount of money.
Yeah, that's a great job. You know, who doesn't want to deliver urine?
It was a pisser, no pun intended.
Oh, that's
But,
that's good. That's good.
oh, I got to turn off my phone. I'm
No
sorry.
worries.
There we go.
I was just going to say proof that you're a writer right there.
There you go. There you go. Exactly.
The
But yeah, no. I've managed to translate a lot of my passion for film and television and pop culture in general into some pretty cool jobs. It goes back to college. When I was at UCLA in the '70s, I would constantly be in the placement center looking for things on the job board, and I found some really cool jobs. I mean, one year I worked for the manager of Sly and the Family Stone, of all things.
Oh, wow.
and they had literally a room full of clippings, of everything that Sly had done over the years, and they wanted to hire a kid to put it all in a scrapbook or a series of scrapbooks. So I spent like the summer gathering and collating and organizing and pasting all these clippings in big scrapbooks, and that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I mean, okay, so that's something I didn't pull up in my research, but I mean, like, just working for Sly and the Family Stone, that's also another kind of amazing thing to add to your already crazy resume.
And then another year, I worked for a screenwriter named James Webb, who
Oh
was
God, no way!
yeah, a great writer. Won an Oscar in 62 for How the West Was Won on writing that great movie, and Pork Chop Hill, Vera Cruz, The Big Country. And he was compiling a book on American popular invention called Who Invented Toilet Paper? So he wanted somebody to go down to the patent office in downtown LA and copy all these files on where inventions began. So I got that gig, and I became very friendly with Webb because in my combat films book, I have a chapter on the making of Patton. And even though he didn't get the final script, it was Coppola and Edmund North who wrote Patton, the George C. Scott film. Webb actually wrote the first draft of that screenplay.
That's right. That's right. No, I mean it is a big deal. I was gonna say, so we were talking about westerns earlier. The Wilhelm scream that I played earlier. So apparently it was originated in the 1951 film Distant Drums.
Oh, interesting.
But it became famous for The Charge of Feather River in 1953.
That's one of my favorite movies. That's so funny you should say that.
So Private Wilhelm, when he dies in the river, when he gets shot in the river, that's his scream, and from then on, it was called the Wilhelm scream.
Well, it's funny. That was 53. Them was 54. So they might have used that same sound effect in Them because they're always reusing sound effects. In fact, I was remembering the sound of the Martian being wounded in War of the Worlds is also featured in the Cecil B. DeMille movie, The Greatest Show on Earth, which was 2 years before war, or 1 year before War of the Worlds. So the studios were always reusing sound effects. This is fun.
Right. Well, so famously now, and it's because of Lucas, the Wilhelm scream. You will find a Wilhelm scream in every Star Wars movie, and as well as every Indiana Jones movie. And it's a running joke.
By the way, if you watch The Charge at Feather River in 3D, it has the greatest 3D shot of all time. Frank Lovejoy is attacked in a cave by a rattlesnake, and he's chewing tobacco, and he literally spits at the screen.
Oh God, they redid that movie in 3D?
No, they didn't redo it. It was originally filmed in 3D.
I did not know that.
That was during all that crazy 3D craze in the 50s, post Wanted Devil, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, no, that was a 3D movie, and it's actually it's so funny you should mention that because I just mentioned I did that work for James Webb.
Right.
James Webb wrote that.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So that's a small world.
That's why I like when you said James Webb. I said, "Oh no way, man! We're talking about a James Webb movie right now." So we've gone off on tangents right here. I'm gonna kind of bring us back a little bit right here because the audience has gotten to know you at this point, so we don't really have to do our get to know you questions. But I'm gonna do these ones because they're fun questions and they're great here, especially because you're.
By the way, excuse me for asking. You said you have a co-pilot who isn't here yet. And what was his name?
Graveyard.
Graveyard. You've got a co-pilot named Graveyard. Very interesting name.
Correct. He goes by his alias. He would rather that the world doesn't know what his real name is. So
got it.
We're fine.
Do you have a name as well?
Well, I go by Young Phil, but I mean Philippe.
Got it. Okay. So you don't have like Cemetery.
No. So we did do a film together where myself and Graveyard were podcasters reviewing a monster sighting in this film that we were in, and he goes by himself, so he's Graveyard, and he named me the Morgue.
Okay. Okay.
So for that film, I went by the Morgue. But with that being said, so we have a segment on our show called Growing Up Geeky. Knowing that you were a nerd and that you're proud of that, what did you geek out on when you were a kid?
Science fiction, fantasy, and horror films. We moved from Chicago when I was 4 years old to LA, and we moved onto a street called Lapeer in West LA, Pico Robertson area. And about 300 yards from my apartment was a movie theater called the Stadium, the Fox West Coast Stadium. And every Saturday I was there for 2 movies. I probably was there every Saturday for 4 years. My parents also took me to adult movies there. And when I say adult movies, I don't mean pornography. It's just movies that weren't kiddie matinees. So I saw movies that were, inoffensive movies like South Pacific was there on as a theatrical release. So, I saw a little bit of everything. But science fiction movies in the late 50s, early 60s, I got really treated to a lot of really fun stuff that to this day sticks with me.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big film buff myself. I grew up more in late 80s, early 90s, so kind of around that. But my wife has really gotten me into movies from the 50s and the 60s. And it's because she is obsessed with the golden age of Hollywood. So she watches a lot of 50s, 60s movies. I've come to find I love film noir. I've always loved film noir, but I love the roots of film noir now.
I was thinking about this the other day, trying to think about where we are today with movies.
Mhm.
And I think everybody's kind of agreeing that we're in kind of a trough period where in some cases we're getting the same movies every year with not a lot of variation. I mean, I admire anybody who can get any kind of a movie made because it's very challenging.
Right.
But I think that what I'd like to say, and this may send a shiver up a lot of directors' spines, is that a lot of movies are becoming too much about the director and not about the story. And I would maintain that in the 50s and 60s into the 70s, storytelling was at a really high point where people went to the movies and were really entertained. And there have been some great directors with great style over the years, like Hitchcock, those kinds of directors. Martin Scorsese, certainly, of course, today, Spielberg. But I think that I like to think that the great stories of, we still have really good movies every year. And I'm not saying that everything is kind of crummy, but I think storytelling back in that era was better.
You know what? I can't disagree with you on that because a lot of films back then, and I think this is why I gravitate towards those types of films now, is because the sound editing may not have been the greatest, but the storytelling was amazing. Just everything about all the stories that they would tell, like there's so much nuance into a lot of the storytelling back then that you don't have as much of now, and that's what makes newer films, when you do get something that has that type of nuance and that type of graded storytelling, it tends to be, everybody makes it like, oh, this is the greatest movie ever made, but it's really just following a formula that has come before it already.
Yeah, I mean, also, again, this is just my opinion, please. I go to the movies to escape. I really do. I don't really want to get too heavy. And I know that there's a reason very heavy movies get made to point out some problems in our society which need to be addressed. But it's kind of not the reason I go to the movies. I kind of feel like maybe I'll see that as a documentary on television. But when I go to a theater, I don't want to be depressed.
Right. No, and I 100% get that as well. So moving on to the next question here. If a movie were made about your life, who would play you and why?
Oh my goodness. That is a very that's a very good question. I well, certainly would not be an action star like Stallone or Schwarzenegger or Harrison Ford or Steve McQueen Errol Flynn for that matter. It probably would be more of a kind of a little bit more of a nerdy guy, kind of like the guy who was in the Apple Pie movies. I'm blanking on his name, but it's Jason Biggs. That's right. I probably more like a Jason Biggs, or the guy who's in those the ones about the Olympians. What's that the series called? Mount Olympus, such and such, and the Mount Olympus. Help me out here a little bit. What's series? Jesse, not Jesse.
Not Wrath of the Titans.
No, that would be more of an action adventure guy again. No, there's a series of movies based on a famous book series about a normal kid who suddenly gets superpowers, and I'm trying to remember what it is. Kind of related to the gods on Olympus or something.
Oh, Shazam?
Not Shazam. Jesse Eisenberg, I think. Jesse Eisenberg and Michael Cera. Jesse Eisenberg and Michael Cera are kind of the same actor. They're just different actors. So Jason Biggs, Jesse Eisenberg, Michael Cera, those would probably be closer to me.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into some more of this. So you get kind of jumping before, because eventually we're.
By the way, Phil, can I turn that around a second? Who would play you?
Oh, who would play me? Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan.
but it would have to be Ryan Reynolds. Somehow you make him slightly shorter, because I'm not as tall as he is, and you do what he did in that one film, the First Date or whatever it was, the one where he's like a fat guy in high school, make him that.
Whoa, wait! Ryan Reynolds played a fat guy in high school. What movie was that?
I gotta pull it up. Like he plays a character where they put a fat suit on him, and he's a fat guy in high school.
Oh, okay.
And then when the girl that he had a crush on sees him later on, he's Ryan Reynolds. He lost a bunch of weight after high school, and now she's got a crush on him. So it's like,
that almost sounds like a remake of that Gwyneth Paltrow movie.
Just Friends. There it is. They just said it in the chat.
Friends. I got to write that down. That sounds fun. I mean, nothing that Ryan Reynolds does isn't great. I mean, Absolutely. Is. I mean, I've even fallen in love with his British soccer series, the one that takes place in Wales.
Welcome to Wrexham. So,
Welcome to Wrexham, which is a lot of fun, and I have no interest in soccer whatsoever, but that show's terrific.
Yeah, we're big fans of that show as well. I think a lot of that is just because the documentary nature of it is really interesting, very compelling. But then the relationship between Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds is also a fun kind of like addition to it, and it's like real life with the two of them. So yeah, we're big fans of Welcome to Wrexham around here as well. But yeah, mine would definitely be Ryan Reynolds.
Well, that's you can't go wrong having Ryan Reynolds play you. That's cool. He would be probably on my short list of actors I would love to meet, because there aren't a lot of them today that I would say, oh my God, I'd love to meet him, and he would be one of them.
Yeah, we're 1 degree of separation away from Ryan Reynolds, and I'm like hoping that that 1 degree will convince him to come on the show.
I have not seen the latest Wolverine versus Deadpool. I hear it's fun.
It's a very fun movie.
Good.
So jumping into kind of more of your career and everything like that, we'll start with kind of your writing here. So you've written multiple definitive books on beloved Hollywood franchises such as James Bond and The Twilight Zone. We also know you're a historian. We talked about that here at the very beginning. So, what made you want to publish a book about the history of the behind the scenes of the James Bond films?
Well, as I mentioned, my combat films book sold 500 copies. So I said to myself, if I'm going to spend 2.5 years researching a book that sells 500 copies, I probably better find another line of work, because that wasn't going to pay any bills, even small bills. So I in my kind of world, I discovered that there were no books about Bond in the behind the scenes. In fact, the only book that was around when I first started research was a very good book by John Brosnan called James Bond in the Cinema, but it was more like a kind of an overview of the series with very little behind the scenes information.
Okay.
So I decided that if I'm going to write about a topic, and pick a topic that everybody loves, and of course, everybody loves the Bond movies. And I got very lucky. I went over to MGM the summer of '77, and I got an interview with Albert R. Broccoli. And for those who don't know who that is, he was the major force behind the series. In fact, his daughter Barbara runs it now with her stepbrother Michael Wilson. But back then, Cubby, that was his nickname, had taken over the series. He was originally partnered with Harry Saltzman back in the early '60s. They both started the Bond series. So Cubby was very nice. I think he was impressed that I wrote the Combat Films book, and he introduced me to Michael Wilson in London. So I got right in there at the beginning with the A team. And because of that access, it really inspired me to do it. I went over there that summer and interviewed a lot of people. I got there just as they had wrapped The Spy Who Loved Me, the third Roger Moore. And I was taken out to the studio. This was one of those great moments. You're this young writer, you don't know anybody, but you're in a Rolls Royce with Michael Wilson and Ken Adam, the production designer, going out to see the first in-house screening of The Spy Who Loved Me. I felt very privileged.
You had to have. I mean, that is, again, that is a great story, but also, it's a good reason to get into that because you wrote that and then the encyclopedia on Bond after that.
Right. Well, the first book was called The James Bond Films: A Behind the Scenes History, and it came out in '81 and did very well. I sold 10 times more books than I had sold. In fact, the first printing sold about 50,000 copies. So that was a really nice sell for me. I updated it 2 years later, and then in '90, I was approached by Contemporary Books of Chicago that had success with the Marilyn Monroe encyclopedia and an Elvis encyclopedia. They said, would you be interested in writing a James Bond encyclopedia? So that was a lot of fun for me because I've always been kind of a fact junkie. I like to define facts and behind the scenes information. And the Bond films are just loaded with little details that would make an interesting encyclopedia, especially if you can find photographs to illustrate, because a Bond book without great photos is just not going to make it. And I was able to find photos all over the world. In fact, the 4th edition of the book came out 2 years ago, and it's the first edition I have with color, as over 400 pictures, half of them are in color, which is a big deal for me. I mean, I'd been doing black and white books for years, and this was my first book with real cool color shots.
That's awesome. So did that lead to then the Twilight Zone encyclopedia after that? Right.
The Chicago Review Press, ironically, the second publisher I worked with on a Bond book was also based in Chicago. So I pitched them on a Twilight Zone encyclopedia. Now, the Twilight Zone has been covered in depth over the years by a writer named Mark Sacree. He did a book back in '82 called The Twilight Zone Companion, which I have a dog-eared copy of. It's one of my favorite books. But Mark did not get heavily into the actors, the people who were in the zone, the original zone, for me, the only zone. And right. So I did over 500 biographies for the book. And the book is a different type of book than his book. Once again, I have the A to Z format. I got all the episodes, all 156, but literally bios on virtually every main performer with their salaries in many cases, because I became very friendly with Carol Serling, Rod Serling's widow, and she opened the files for me. In fact, she supplied most of the photos for the book.
That's interesting. So with all that,
I mean, the Twilight Zone, I mean, after Bond, I had to find another subject that could reach a lot of people. And by the way, after the Bond stuff, I wasn't making my living writing film books. I was a film publicist in Hollywood. I worked for most of the studios. That was a way of actually earning a living in the business, which is something I advise all young writers who want to get into Hollywood. It's very nice that you want to be a creative writer, whether you're an historian or a screenwriter or whatever, but you need that day job because there can be literally decades between assignments. And I'm feeling that right now because since 2001, I've had a film production company and we're out there every day trying to sell films and television shows. And we've produced some films, as we'll talk about later. But the fact is, I had to, after long periods of nothing going on, I said, I got to get back into the world. So that's when I chose The Twilight Zone. And I'm very happy with the way the book turned out.
Oh, again, every review that I've seen on it and everything like that is the same as the James Bond book, is that they describe it as definitive.
Thank you. Well, that's kind of the hallmark. You know, if you're going to do research, and I like to say that if possible, I like to get firsthand information. I don't like just going to Google and writing what 9,000 people wrote before me. I try to interview as many people who were living on both series. So in the Twilight Zone's case, I really talked to a lot of people who were still around, and there still are quite a few people still around, obviously now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. But yeah, I try to find information that no one else has, because if you're going to do an overview of a series that's so well known, you better bring something new to the table.
Right. And it helps define you and separates you from your work, separating you from your peers.
Exactly.
Right. Now, you were also honored, I would call this honored, to be able to do the DVD commentary for the classic film The Great Escape. How did that come about?
Well, The Great Escape is kind of a touchstone for me. In my original Combat Films book, I have a chapter on it. I actually went to Warner's, interviewed John Sturges, the director, on the lot back in the early 70s. And The Great Escape is kind of a movie that has always been one of my it is my all-time favorite movie. I saw it originally in LA back in 63. Shortly thereafter, I was riding my Schwinn Stingray with that saddle seat in Palms. I'm stopped at the corner of Motor and Tabor, I think. And I hear a voice, "Can you tell me where MGM is?" And I turn around, and it was Steve McQueen in a red Ferrari.
No way.
I'm looking at Steve McQueen in a Ferrari, and he's asking me where MGM is. Now, in retrospect, he knew where MGM was. He'd been working there for years. But I read that he liked talking to kids, and I was probably 11 at the time. So we get into this conversation. He said, "Where are you headed?" I said, "I'm going to a slot car track. I was going to race my little sports car." So it was like pablum for McQueen. He said, "Oh, really? That's great. I hear they're racing motorcycles at slot car tracks now." Now, I shook my head and said, "Yes, of course," or I nodded as if I knew that, and I didn't know that. But if he had told me there were aliens landing in Pacoima, I would have believed him. I mean, it was Steve McQueen, and then he said goodbye and drove off in his Ferrari. I mean, talk about a moment. And Steve McQueen, by the way, never talked to anybody. He was probably one of the notorious interview avoidance people ever. So the fact that I got 30 seconds at a traffic light with him was a bit of a coup. So between seeing The Great Escape that year, meeting Steve McQueen in that way, and just becoming a film historian and learning about the making of that movie, just it's been so I did the chapter in Combat Films, and then when I went to Showtime in the early 90s, I convinced the network to let me do a 30th anniversary documentary called Return to the Great Escape, where we interviewed everybody who was living. And then I did the commentary. Then I was asked to do the commentary. And not only was I asked to do the commentary when they brought out a special edition, but my commentary that year was nominated for Best Commentary from the DVD Exclusive Academy, which was an organization that was around for a while. And I lost to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. So I didn't mind losing to Peter Jackson, but that was kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, I mean, at least it was Peter Jackson and not like something else, you know. But I mean, that is amazing. Again, it's just the story of meeting Steve McQueen, and then the round robin of it. Of later on down the line, you were the one that did the commentary for The Great Escape. That's just it's almost, to me, it's like a dream come true kind of thing.
Well, not only that, I was approached by a French filmmaker about 3 years ago who had taken a camera crew to all the locations where they made The Great Escape in Bavaria, and he was going to do a then and now look at those locations. So we kind of teamed up, and I brought him to the same documentary company that I had previously sold my documentary on Guy Gabaldon, the Hell to Eternity guy I was telling you about earlier. So our film came out 3 years ago. It's called The Coolest Guy Movie Ever, and you can find that on Amazon too. So The Great Escape is always in the air around me. In fact, if I lower my screen, we're on video, right?
Yes.
So if I
You're
go
alive.
screen to there they are at your upper corner there, you can see my half sheet poster.
That's so cool. I'm just admiring these posters that you have here.
Oh yeah, those are special films. I mean, obviously, The Magnificent Seven is a key film for me. The Professionals, a Richard Brooks film, an Errol Flynn movie called Rocky Mountain is a favorite. And by the way, everything leads to Guy Gabaldon. That middle picture there is a painting we commissioned of Guy leading 800 Japanese off of Saipan in 1944 by Henry Godinez. That's a print of a poster signed by Guy Gabaldon, and right next to it is a Japanese Run Silent, Run Deep with Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable.
Right. It fits in perfectly with everything else that's up on that wall there. It almost looks like a movie poster the way it is.
Oh yeah.
That is great. I'm just in awe by everything that we're talking about here. So kind of sticking around, and when we're talking marketing at this point, but you also worked in marketing. Did you fall into that, or was that something that you pursued? Did you try to go into that? Or
I when I got that job as an advance man on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it opened the world of publicity to me. Now, I didn't really know much about publicity, but the summer of '77, after I did all that James Bond research, I came back and somebody said that I should leave my resume at PR agencies because I needed to get a real job. I wasn't going to be making a living writing. So interestingly, I just sold an article to the LA Times called "Whatever Happened to the James Bond Women?" And it was kind of an overview of all these beautiful women and what happened to them after they did a Bond movie. And I left my resume at a PR agency called Stan Rosenfield and Associates, and he was very impressed that I had a 2-page article in the LA Times calendar. So he hired me as the staff writer in the PR agency. That was my introduction to being in a PR agency. I was kind of the guy who wrote the biographies of their new clients. I occasionally would write a pitch letter or a press kit. But what was interesting for me was a lady kept on coming in to do her photographic kills. In other words, she'd bring in a stack of proof sheets from some movie she was working on, and one of Stan's clients was one of the actors in the movie, so she had to get the actor to approve the photos. And I finally asked her what she did, and she told me that she was a unit publicist. And I said, well, what's a unit publicist? And I learned that it's an actual member of a movie crew, like a grip or electric or a camera person. Most major movies have a PR person.
right.
I said, that's kind of cool. And then her name was Phyllis Gardner, a really nice lady. She became head of MGM. And then this would have been about 1980. She told me that she needed somebody to write a press kit for the Bo Derek Tarzan movie that had been finished that year. But they had fired their publicist before they got a press kit. So they asked me if I would interview Bo Derek and Miles O'Keefe, who played Tarzan. And so I did that. And then after that, she gave me my first unit assignment. I was sent up to Wyoming for 3 months that fall to work on an Alan Rudolph thriller called Endangered Species with Robert Urich and Jo Beth Williams. And that was kind of a really cool experience. It was based on a series of events that had happened in the West over the last 10 years where these mutilated cattle were found out on the prairie with no tracks around them. So there were all these theories that they were part of an interplanetary experimentation on Earth cattle or devil cults or whatever. And it was pretty wacky, but the movie gave it a much more sinister kind of paramilitary thing where they were testing germ warfare strains. So it was an interesting experience.
Almost like a War of the Worlds kind of idea vibe thing going on there.
Well, it certainly made you think it might be, but it turned out to be very terrestrial in terms of what was going on. Peter Coyote, who is well known from E.T. as Keys, the guy with the keys, he played the head of the mercenaries, and really nice guy. Got to know him a little bit. And then JoBeth Williams had just finished doing Poltergeist, so I got to know her. And then, let's see, 3 years later, I was assigned to a film for Columbia Pictures called Desert Bloom. I went down to Tucson for 2.5 months and worked on a movie called Desert Bloom, which is about, it took place in 1951 in Las Vegas, which was the site of the first nuclear testing. And John Voight is married to JoBeth Williams. Ellen Barkin is his sister-in-law. And this is at a time when people in Las Vegas would get picnic baskets and go out and watch the A-bombs go off. What were they thinking?
They weren't thinking that it was in any way, shape, or form.
Well, of course, the famous story about the Conqueror movie where all those Hollywood actors end up getting cancer because they filmed on radioactive turf in Utah. Pretty awful.
Yeah. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, moving on to, again, before we jump into your podcasting and everything, so you put out a children's book in 2019 called The Cat Who Lived with Anne Frank. Had you always wanted to write a children's book? And what made you choose to write around such a historical figure like Anne Frank?
Well, I have a little hobby. I've been pretty adhering to it since in high school, where I'll tape a full-length feature film on audio cassette tape. I've got dozens of cassette tapes of full-length movies, and I play them when I'm shaving or when I'm doing anything. And I just don't like silence. I always like to have something going. Some people will put on the Beatles. People will put on Rolling Stones. I put on the Searchers, or I put on War of the Worlds, or I put on The Diary of Anne Frank. And one day I was listening to that movie, because you listen to them, you don't watch them. This is long before video or digital. And there's a scene in the movie where Mooshie, the real cat that Peter Van Pels brought into the attic, is racing around the attic and they're chasing after him. And I suddenly dawned on me, what did the cat think of these people who never go outside and who have to stay perfectly still for 12 hours a day while the workmen downstairs work in the factory? Because if a board gets tripped, they could be found and they could be sent to concentration camps. So I called up my friend David Miller, and David Miller and I were very close friends. David used to run Criterion Collection Laserdisc and had hired me to do commentary tracks on the first 3 James Bond movies. So I said, David, what do you think about a book called The Cat Who Lived with Anne Frank? So that started a long odyssey of trying to figure out how children's books work, because I knew nothing about the marketplace. At the same time, we started putting together an idea for an animated movie, figuring this would work as an animated feature as well. So the book came out in 2019, and I'm very proud of that book. I thought we did a very nice job. We got a real terrific illustrator named Elizabeth Baddeley, and the book has been selling. It's currently in the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam. I was there in May just to make sure. And it's an important book because the stories of the Holocaust are not being carried forward as much as the need is. And it's important for young people, even at a young age, and our target audience is 8 to 14, is them to know something about this period. Right. Because, if you don't learn the lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat them. Absolutely. So we've been getting a lot of positive response from Holocaust museums, churches, temples, all sorts of groups that are fighting hate.
That is beautiful. And again, just the premise of the story is very interesting. It's definitely something that a child can grasp, but it's also carrying a story that has a lot of gravity.
Very true. Very, very true. And all of it is true. I mean, we didn't make up this cat. Mushi is, he's a Tom. He was brought into the attic by Peter Van Pels. Anne was very upset at first because she had to leave her own cat back at home. And basically, she grew to love Mushi. And if you read the diary, she writes about Mushi frequently. So there was lots of things to work on that helped. You have to excuse me for 1 second, Phil. My Maltese here wants to be held for a second, so hang on 1 second.
No worries.
Okay, so this is Kimmy. Kimmy.
Hey, Kimmy.
That's Kimmy. Kimmy just had cataract surgery. She'd been blind for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And she now can see out of her left eye. So she's a real sweetie. She's almost 14, but this eye surgery has given her a lot of bounce in her step.
Kimmy and I share something because I recently had cataract surgery as well.
Oh, very good. Very good. How's your eyesight?
Better than it's ever been.
That's what I hear. I hear it's a bit of a miracle surgery.
It kind of is. I noticed, like, I see better now than I ever did, even when I was younger in the Army. I see better now, and I'm just like, wow, this is pretty great.
Well, three ophthalmologists, animal ophthalmologists, turned us down. They said she's too old to have it, but we found somebody in Culver City at an eye clinic, and Kimmy is doing really well.
That is good. Congratulations, Kimmy, on being able to see again.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
That is great. Uh-oh.
Are you still there?
Yep, we're still here. We don't see you anymore.
I hit a button, and all of a sudden, you came off of. Okay, can you see me?
No.
Okay, so what do I do here? All of a sudden, I was okay. You're on the show. Everyone can see and hear you. Oh God. Looks like your camera was unplugged. Plug it back or select a different camera. Okay. God, that's so weird. Oh, here I am. Okay, sorry about that.
We see you now.
Okay, that was the miracle of electronics. I'm going to put Kimmy back on her chair.
Okay.
Do you have dogs?
I do not at the moment. We just got done babysitting my mom's 2 teacup Yorkies, and she picked them up this morning.
They're a handful. They're a handful.
Yeah, definitely.
Where are you based, by the way?
Sacramento.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah, so we're in Sacramento here. Well, funny enough that because you're based in LA, right?
Right.
And you're from Chicago.
Originally. Big Chicago sports fan. By rights, I should be LA. And by the way, I know you guys are monitoring the baseball playoffs. Don't tell me anything because I'm recording both games.
We're a couple people in the chat who are big baseball player.
Yeah.
We're all sports rich too. But no, I was bringing that up because I'm based out of Sacramento. Graveyard is based out of Chicago.
Oh, fabulous. Fabulous. Well, he's probably enjoying the Bears right now because the Bears are having a little bit of a revival thanks to this new quarterback.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think he's a Bears fan.
Oh, okay. I assumed, but obviously
yeah, I don't know if he is. We'll have to ask him when he finally gets on the show. Which, yeah, he's later than he normally is. So work happens.
No worries.
Oh yeah, no, we're fine. We're having a good conversation. I'm happy with that. So let's jump into your podcast because you have you got some things we want to talk about here. So when did you start Saturday Night at the Movies?
About 2.5 years ago. I've been talking to a lot of people about podcasting, and it seemed to me a little too much tech to get involved in. I didn't really feel like starting something I couldn't do well at. Once again, trying to be definitive or at least being professional. But I met somebody who knew how to uplink, and I have to tell you that in interviewing people on both sides of the camera, it restored a lot of the wonder I had when I first started writing for Cinefantastique for 40, 50 years ago. I mean, basically, I'm having a ball finding interesting subjects that many of whom haven't spoken before, and many and all different fun things. Like this week, I have John Burlingame on the show. John Burlingame is like to film and television music what I am to James Bond. In fact, he did a book on James Bond music, but we do a show just on TV themes. And I've had a lot of fun putting that all together because we're going to feature, he's going to talk about the theme of Beverly Hillbillies, and then we're going to play some of the Beverly Hillbillies themes. So we do that 15 or 16 times during the course of the podcast. And that's fun for me. That really is. And we're talking about taking a composer like Jerry Goldsmith or Elmer Bernstein, and doing an evening on just playing some of their great music.
Now, was he the composer for Beverly Hillbillies, or he just knows the music?
He's an historian. So
Okay.
Paul Henning wrote that song and
Score, right?
and we do discussions on the Twilight Zone theme, of course. We talk about Gilligan's Island and Mission Impossible and Hawaii Five-0 and Game of Thrones, and it's just a lot of fun. So I'm enjoying it. It's called Stephen J. Rubin Saturday Night at the Movies. We spell out Jay, and we now have a YouTube channel as well, so I can show the video, which I couldn't. And then actually, you can explain this to me, Phil. When we do podcasts on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Podbean, etc., that just is audio, right?
Yeah. So it's meant to just be audio. Spotify just started doing video.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah. So you can upload video directly to Spotify now.
Oh, okay. That's something good to know, etc. So I'm having fun with that. And then I was approached by two friends of mine, Julian Schlossberg and Arthur Friedman, and we come together on a second podcast called Tales from Hollywood Land.
Right.
And it's produced by a terrific guy out of Atlanta named Mike Faber, who's another nerd like all of us. And we've been doing that now for almost a little over a year. And it's a little different. We don't have as many guests, but we get really into an overview of genre stuff. I mean, we'll do a whole show on Westerns. We'll do a whole show on science fiction of the 70s, things like that. So that's been a lot of fun, too. So I do 2 podcasts a week.
Right. And I had a question for you on that. So I was going to ask you specifically about Tales from Hollywood Land. Is that just an extension for your love for all things Hollywood?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm not as up on things as some of the guys. For instance, we did a whole show on Sammy Davis Jr. the other day, and I didn't, aside from loving him in Ocean's 11, the original, I didn't have a lot to contribute to Sammy Davis Jr. But like when we did a show on science fiction films of the 70s, I was all over that. So, everybody has their little specialty. And Arthur Friedman is an interesting guy, comes from exhibition. He owned movie theaters. And then he produced the Bobby Darin biopic starring Kevin Spacey, Beyond the Sea.
Right.
And Julian is a Broadway producer, documentarian, radio host, now podcasting as well. In fact, Julian just scored a Woody Allen interview.
Oh, wow.
Talk about gets.
I know. That is a major get.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of fun with that. And yeah, but I'll tell you, my main beat right now is still going out there trying to sell movies every day. I have been writing a lot of comedy, and I'm partnered with a guy I've known for 40 years. His name is Billy Reback. Billy cut his bones on the Tim Allen series Home Improvement. He wrote for a lot of the Disney Channel shows. And Billy and I have been cranking out one spec comedy script after another. And our big mission this past 18 months is trying to find an agent who will represent us. And because we're not 27 anymore,
right,
and because we're not, in the cool part of Hollywood, we're kind of older guys, it's been a little challenging.
I can imagine. It's just
the way we've got fun stuff. We've got really fun stuff. One of the projects we're hawking right now, remember the great courtroom drama, 12 Angry Men?
Yeah, I saw that. When I read the synopsis of that, I laughed to myself, and I was like, okay, that's got to be funny.
So, yeah, we have 12 Anxious Men, which is probably the most dysfunctional jury in the history of juries, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of twists and turns. They say write something that could, you could shoot tomorrow, because the nice thing about 12 Anxious Men is it requires one location, one room,
Right.
12 actors. So we're hopeful we can get that mounted soon.
Right. It's basically the same idea as 12 Angry Men. You're just a bunch of guys in a court, not a courtroom, but a bunch of guys inside of the
jury deliberation room.
Right.
Are you making a castle there?
No. So I am building. I want to say that this is actually the courthouse in the movie, but I am building scenes from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, interesting. Are those Legos?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. My son was very much into Legos. I remember him building the Millennium Falcon.
Yes.
And you got to be very careful when you transport Lego spaceships, because if you bump into something, the whole thing explodes on you. And the Millennium Falcon slipped out of my hands once and had a crash and burn.
that happened to my so I have an 89 Batwing from the 89 movie.
Right.
And that happened to the Batwing. Somebody bumped into it and knocked the whole wing off of it. And I had to rebuild the whole thing.
That's great. That's great. Phil, I hate to interrupt this great flow because we're having a ball, but Kimmy needs to go out and do a little business. Can I break away for 4 minutes?
Absolutely.
Let me just break away, and because I think she's howling behind me because her bladder's exploding. So I'll come back to you in 4 minutes.
All right. No worries.
Okay, come here, Kimmy. You want to do a hurry up?
Just so you guys can all see where the progress is on what's going on here. So it's basically what it seems like to me. What I'm building here is the courthouse that the mayor character from Nightmare Before Christmas is in. It's kind of cool right here because you have like this kind of like court area. The door opens and everything like that, and it's kind of like weird sized right there. But then we also have, of course, the mayor. I put his happy face on. But we can change it to his anxious face. And now you have the mayor with his anxious face. All right. And of course, we have the trick-or-treaters in the tub. I'm sure this thing probably goes on there. All right, so it's already starting to look a little bit like the courthouse. Not fully yet, but it's getting there. Of course, nerds, if you guys have any questions, if anything comes up that you guys can think of that you want to ask Jay, given that he is a classic Hollywood historian as well, somebody who's worked in the field, please feel free to ask any questions, guys. As far as Graveyard goes, I don't know what happened to him. He may have gotten eaten on the way home. It happens, guys. And then when I get left by everybody else on the team, just abandoned by the rest of my fellow nerds. So going on to the next bag here, guys. So in an hour so far, I've gotten a bag done. Last week I got another bag. Also, as a reminder, guys, remember we have another interview tomorrow with Reynard R.J. Palisot. He is a comic book creator. He's associated with our friends over at right there. But we're going to be interviewing RJ tomorrow. It's his first interview talking about his new book. So coming back over here, I was just trying to fill time while you were gone.
Sorry about that. You're very accommodating, by the way. I don't think I could have pulled that off on the Tonight Show.
No, absolutely not. Tonight Show probably wouldn't have worked that way.
But Kimmy's happier now, although she's going to probably want to eat something later on. So anyway, let's continue this fun stuff.
Absolutely. So the next question I have on this, and just given that you're doing two podcasts and working on those, and I'm sure you're having a lot of fun just because it seems like you're having a lot of fun. Aside from like, technological things at the beginning, have you had any like major hiccups since starting either of your shows?
I've had two. I've interviewed about 130 guests. Two didn't show up. I had Gary Lockwood booked, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. He just disappeared into thin air. Probably Hal the computer had something to do with that. And then James Darren, who just passed away a few weeks ago, he was also booked. I wanted to talk about the Guns of Navarone and Gidget, two very different types of movies. And unfortunately, he also kind of disappeared on me, so I was left holding the bag. But anyway, but a few things. My producer sometimes would be out out drinking a little bit, and he'd fall asleep when he was supposed to be recording. But I learned that I could record my own podcast with no problem. So I've become more of a techie. In fact, I've been learning iMovie this week to be able to incorporate, music clips into the podcast.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, we recently had something like that. Ken Page, who played Oogie Boogie in Nightmare Before Christmas, we were in talks to have him on the show, and he passed away recently.
Yeah, that does happen. It's unfortunate. We lose people every day. In fact, I was noting in the news today that Mitzi Gaynor passed away, and Mitzi Gaynor was one of the stars of South Pacific, who I wanted to have on my show, but I was told she wasn't well. So obviously, she definitely wasn't well. You got to get to these people. It's important. One of the first interviews I did for my podcast was Nancy Olson, who was one of the stars of Sunset Boulevard with Gloria Swanson and William Holden. And she was in her 90s, but she's like sharp as a tack. You get lucky. The same thing with Constance Towers. So I wanted to talk about the Horse Soldiers, Stephanie Powers, all sorts of fun people.
I really need to get my wife to listen to your show, because these are all people that I know she likes.
Oh yeah, those are all. Yeah, they're all there for the picking. Just on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple. And yeah, I've got next week. I'm going to be talking to Tom Schulman, the screenwriter who wrote "What About Bob" and the Dead Poets Society. So I'm getting some good people. And later we're going to take one of my interviews, my original interview with Cubby Broccoli, and for the 60th anniversary of Goldfinger, we're going to feature that interview. I've been able to repurpose some of my original interviews into podcasts. I was one of the last people to interview Hitchcock. So here's a funny story. I get a call one day from Kyle Counts, who was one of the staff writers for Cinefantastique. He literally calls me up one day and says, "Steve, I can't make it down to LA. Can you interview Hitchcock?" It's
like the sarcasm in me would be like, "Oh no, absolutely not. You can't do that. No, I'm going to be there right now."
It's like telling a minor league baseball player, "You want to go to the show? You want to be a starter for the Dodgers tomorrow?" So I said, "Yeah." It was the biggest no-brainer question of my life. So yeah, he was doing a retrospective on the Birds. So we spent an hour at Universal talking about the Birds. So that's actually on my podcast too. You can dial that up.
That is awesome. I think the Birds it just got re-released on Netflix.
Oh, interesting.
I want to say I just saw it on Netflix last night, and I was like, "Wait, the Birds is on Netflix?" I know my wife knows a lot about that movie specifically because, like when we would drive by some of the sites where the movie was filmed.
Oh, in Bodega Bay.
Bodega Bay, and she would always point out, like, "Oh yeah, so this is where Birds was filmed," and everything like that.
Is your wife a writer as well?
No, my wife is a self-proclaimed Hollywood historian.
Oh, okay.
More so that's because she has a lot of interest in it, so she tends to look up a lot of things. She was a writer. It's her choice. She's kind of like paused for a while, but she was writing a story that was related to like Golden Age Hollywood.
Got it.
And and yeah, she is very interested in things like that. So
Well,
and if,
definitely send her my way because I think we got some fun casts for her.
yeah, absolutely. I think she would love to listen to it. I definitely have to put it down her way. Um, Going on to the rest of the questions I have here. So, have you learned anything about yourself based on just because from doing the podcasts?
Well, I kind of want to do more of this kind of work. I'm a big Turner Classic Movies fan. It's my default channel. So Ben Mankiewicz kind of has my dream job, hosting movies both front and back. So I'm hoping at some point to use all this experience of being a podcaster, being a film historian, being a commentator, and try to translate that into hosting work. When I grew up in LA, they used to have people, and I don't know if they will ever do anything like this again. It's probably a kind of a pipe dream, but they literally would have in the midday, they would have a guy, an older guy, sometimes an actor, hosting a movie. He'd be sitting there in a chair, the little projector, and he'd turn on the projector, and you could watch a Three Stooges movie or a Abbott and Costello movie. And it was just kind of a relaxing way of watching an old movie with having somebody offer some commentary on it. That would be fun for me. Now, that's kind of really retro. So I
Right.
don't know if it would go over these days because scheduling is very tight. And is it basically a fact of life that Turner Classic Movies is the only place that curates their movies? I would think there would be other opportunities.
I hear that. No, yeah, and that's again, it's very, it's a very cool thing, and like, God, that would be fun to be able to just kind of to curate movies and host a show on that, especially on
Oh
something.
yeah. I mean, Amazon bought the whole MGM library, and they basically show the movies without any context. So it'd be kind of funny, not funny, but kind of fun to give people, just like they do on TCM, a little context about why this movie was made and who the people are. And it's amazing how younger audiences have no idea who these actors are. I mean, I was watching Jeopardy, which is kind of a go-to for my wife and I. And they showed a picture of Robert Mitchum. Nobody knew who that was. It's kind of
Oh
sad.
wow!
Yeah.
It's funny is my wife and I when we're bored or when we're going on long drives in order to stay awake, we'll do trivia. And my trivia, I mean, I'm just whatever you throw at me because I like to know random facts. But her choice is always Golden Age of Hollywood, and it's always guessing what actors were in what movies, or sometimes it'll be like this movie had these actors. What's the name of the movie, or what actors were in this movie? So 9 times out of 10, she usually guesses them all right. If it's Golden Age of Hollywood, she usually knows.
Yeah, we play a game on long distance trips called Actor Movie Actor, where you start with an actor and you name a movie that actor is in, and then you name another actor who is in that movie, and it goes on and on and on. It plays like almost like a tennis match where you're matching all of your knowledge back and forth. So yeah, no, I love trivia games about movies. I love game shows. It's before I got into movies, I was a game show writer. I used to write for the Joker's Wild for Barry and Enright Productions after college, and that was a lot of fun too. I think trivia has always been a part of my life in terms of everything I do, finding little facts and turning them into books or magazine articles or newspaper articles or even questions on a game show.
Right. Oh man, that's great. Again, more reason for my wife to listen to your shows and everything that you have going on.
Fabulous, fabulous.
So we're gonna go into some questions here, learning a little bit more about you and your opinion on things. So, in your opinion, what is the best sci-fi franchise?
Good question. I think in history, I would have to put Back to the Future up there. I
Oh,
think
Graveyard would be so angry with you right now. He hates Back to the Future.
Well, sorry, Graveyard, you're full of beans. I think Back to the Future, Back to the Future is one of the greatest franchises in history. Franchises. I mean, the original Twilight Zone, I would have to say, is just continues to deliver great stuff. I used to think Star Wars was a great franchise, but I'll tell you the movies have fallen pretty much far. The TV shows are much better, but the movies they need to find their just like with Star Trek. The first Star Trek reboot that J.J. Abrams made, I thought was terrific, and then the last two have been totally forgettable. What else do I like science fiction wise? I'd have to stick with Back to the Future as my go-to.
I can't wait till Graveyard gets here and I can tell him, like, yeah, so you missed it. Steven said Back to the Future is the best sci-fi franchise of all time. And he'll be like, oh.
Hey, anybody who can write with Marty looking at the little boy in the playpen and say, so you're my Uncle Joey. Better get used to these bars, kid. Pretty fun. That's pretty clever writing.
Yeah, I make jokes about just about Leah Thompson all the time, because it's like, God, she 2 movies in her career where she had to do some weird sexual thing. Back to the Future because it's like, oh yeah, I have the hots for my son, and Howard the Duck because she sleeps with the duck.
You know, I excuse me, but I've never seen Howard the Duck. I think I was warned off it years ago.
Yeah, it's not the worst movie, but I wouldn't call it a good movie either. It is a comic book movie. It was Steven Spielberg saying, I'm going to make a comic book movie, and it was very weird. But yeah, so what would be, now, I've got to preface this. When I say movie sequel, I mean in terms of a movie that has not been made. So what would be the worst movie sequel ever made? So, like, what movie doesn't need a movie sequel is basically what I'm asking here.
You know, it's funny, when we talk about remakes, the word in science fiction is that remakes are usually just awful. And sequels have, I'm trying to think of, that's a very interesting question. I mean, there's some movies that you don't need, like, for instance, Back to the Future. You don't need to do a remake or a sequel of Back to the Future. It's fine the way it is. It really is.
Which they are saying at this point, there are filmmakers saying they want to remake it for a new audience. And I feel like you don't need to do Back to the Future for a new audience.
Well, you know what's going on in Hollywood these days. The original, that's part of the reason I'm having trouble getting people to read our original comedies. If it's original, nobody wants to see it anymore. It's almost like it's prequels, sequels, remakes, reboots. That's really hogging the air in Hollywood. One of my screenplays, we shared it with an executive at Paramount, and they literally said to me, and they said, this would be a great movie for Netflix. I said, well, wait, how come it's not a great movie for Paramount? He says, well, we just make prequels and sequels and reboots and remakes. And what does that say about the movie business? I have to, again, I try not to be such a complainer, but I grew up in an era when you opened the Friday newspaper, when there were newspapers with ads, and you'd say, oh, I want to see that. 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 Of course, there are no ads anymore in newspapers. Newspapers are barely read. But right. Look at me. I've been talking to you for over an hour about the movie business and my involvement in it. I've been to the movies exactly twice this year. I mean, what does that say? I mean, there are a lot of movies being released. I had no interest in seeing most of them. And I say that more and more these days because I live in LA. I drive around and look at billboards. Every billboard is a remake, a sequel, or a reboot. It's almost originality has disappeared. So it's very frustrating.
Yeah, no, I get that because I mean, again, it's the same.
For instance, the Godfather movies. The first two are literally brilliant.
Right.
I mean, they both won Best Picture, and of course, they decided to make the third one. And when Winona Ryder broke her ankle playing volleyball, they brought in Sofia Coppola to play Al Pacino's daughter, which didn't really work, although I give her credit for doing her best. They didn't need to make that movie. It just didn't need to be made. They should have left it with just the first two.
Right.
Did they need to remake West Side Story? I mean, Steven Spielberg pours all of his creativity in kind of a misbegotten exercise. We didn't need another West Side Story movie. It
Right.
was competently made, but it didn't make me forget the original. By the way, I had George Shakiris and Russ Tamblyn on my show talking about the original, which to me still works 60 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm somebody from the Hispanic community, so I mean, like, I 100% understand. Like, yeah, you don't really need to remake that. It was fine the way it was.
Yeah. I mean, I understood the need to have real Puerto Rican actors playing Puerto Rican actors. That made sense to me, but it just didn't need to be remade. They should have made an original as opposed to a remake. See, the thing is, these studios and streamers, whatever, they want pre-marketed properties so that they don't have to start from scratch to introduce audiences to a new thing.
Right.
And to me, that's lazy. That means you're not putting your marketing efforts in the right way. If somebody comes up with a good idea for a movie and it works, go out and promote the living crap out of it. It doesn't have to be Batman 3, Iron Man 4, Spider-Man 8. I mean, I understand the audiences for those movies, and certainly there are young people who love that stuff. But after seeing like 72 superhero movies, I begin to think, like that old song, is that all there is?
Right. No, that makes sense.
Now I'm sounding like a crabby old man, so I'm sorry.
Jeff in the chat said I tried to find a newspaper earlier and I couldn't. So like, and that's kind of like where we're at in this day and age, right?
I mean, I used to open the LA Times on Sunday. The calendar section is our entertainment section. There were like 34 pages of stereo ads before you even got to the first story. I mean, the Sunday paper, I don't know what it's like in Sacramento, but the Sunday paper used to be thick as a brick. And now it's like a throwaway paper.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting their news on the internet. I understand that. But I'm kind of old school. I still like to sit down with the paper. And speaking of baseball, the LA Times announced this year that they were firing all their overnight staff. So we don't get sports scores the day after. I mean, the whole point of living on the West Coast is you get the baseball day on one page. And when they eliminated sports scores, it was just horrible.
Yeah. It's already bad enough at this point. I mean, it is. I think just because in this day and age, everything is accessible at any given moment. You know, if you want something, you can find it on the internet immediately.
So, Phil, I got to go feed this little lady. This has been a lot of fun. Can we do it again?
Absolutely. No, yeah. Before I let you go here, so we're going to jump into a couple wrap-up questions here. So I've got 3 wrap-up questions for you here.
Go ahead.
Before I let you go. Number 1, hardest question you're ever going to be asked in your life. Are you ready for this?
Ready.
Being that you're in LA, what is your favorite kind of taco?
I'm more of a taco salad kind of guy or a burrito guy.
Okay.
So I'm not much into tacos. There's not enough food there for me. I got to have a hunk of burrito or a nice, plentiful taco salad. But if I'm going to have a taco, it's usually a veggie taco, no cheese.
Veggie taco, no cheese. All right. You can go with that.
That was definitely a tough question.
I know, right? Well, most of the time, because most people are like, "Oh man, it's hard to choose which taco I want." So what's next for you? Do you have any projects that are not under NDA that you can talk about?
Well, I'm writing a novel. I've started. It's going to be kind of a horror thriller type of novel, summer reading type novel. I think I've got a good storyline, about 25 pages in. I got to find time to work on it, getting a new laptop so I can do that. It's funny because I don't like to work at home. I like to go to a coffee shop and open up my laptop like 10 billion other people and just kind of start cranking copy. And I'm going to be on an airplane soon to Hawaii and take a little family vacation. I'll probably work on in Hawaii as well. So I'm working on that. Certainly the podcast is ongoing. My writing partner and I still crank out comedy scripts. We actually took one of our comedy scripts and turned it into a feature-length podcast. We actually took 18 actors into a recording studio, and we had all the dialogue recorded. So we basically have an audio movie, which is a real throwback for me, because
Right.
all of a sudden, instead of listening to everybody else's movies, I've created a little audio movie. So that's in post. It's a great little story. It's called Spacemen from Planet Judy. And it's basically the day that Earth is invaded by a fleet of ships that abduct all the gay men, and they take them back to a planet named after Judy Garland in another galaxy. and, and the story is about these two straight guys who happen to be dressed in drag because there was a mix-up in their Halloween costumes. So they're on the spaceship with all these gay men, and it's their odyssey of how they get off Judy. And it's kind of like if Abbott and Costello was still making movies in the 2020s, this would probably be what they would do.
It sounds absolutely hilarious.
It's very funny. We got Paula Abdul, by the way, to play the Queen of the Amazons, which was a big coup for us.
That is so good. That's awesome. I can't wait to hear that. I'm definitely going to listen to that. That just sounds funny. So where can everybody follow you or listen if they want to learn more about you, follow the work that you're doing or anything new that you have coming up? Is there any social media or any other?
Oh, yeah. Well, if they type Stephen J. Rubin into Google, Jayrubin, they can find me. I have the podcasts. I'm on Facebook, Stephen J. Rubin. I'm on LinkedIn, Stephen J. Rubin. I love to hear from fans. Love to trade tidbits of information. I have a website, stephenjrubin.com. A lot of my podcasts are on the website now. So yeah, no, happy to keep in contact with everybody, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, head over to stephenjrubin.com. Check out all of the work that he's got going on over there and listen to the podcasts.
Fabulous, Phil. And I hope to do your show again. This is a lot of fun. You are so prepared. I was very impressed.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Have a good one.
We'll see you soon, Stephen.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, here we are, nerds. I'm still building, and Graveyard is still not here. I'm going to shoot him a text real quick, but I'm going to continue building. I'm going to continue going on right here. All right, so I'm going to continue here to build this this thing. So if you guys can see it now, because we've got the whole screen here, at least until Graveyard shows up, or at least somebody shows up. It's starting to become the courthouse. And you guys can already see the mayor hanging out in the front right there. Jack. Jack Skellington. Trying to continue to build here. Looks like Matt is going to hop on here in a moment. So we have that. Again, guys, I'm interested in this, in Stephen's show, just because of the amount of work that goes into all this, and there's a lot of experience, and it was just kind of cool hearing all that experience that he's had in Hollywood, and then that he talks to so many people that are in Hollywood land. It's very interesting. So I'm continuing to build here. I think these are like pipes that it's got me building, like in the front of the building. I'm like crashing and burning right now, trying to talk to everyone. but it's okay. This is like me when I'm gaming on when I used to game on Mondays. Just a whole bunch of conversations with just me. All right. So moving on to the next part here. So they're not exactly. They're just kind of slightly off of each other. It's kind of like that. Like how it's like somewhat of a dilapidated building. All right, so I've got the bone. Got a bone to pick with you. That's right. That's right. I should have asked you guys in the first place. I forget you guys have microphones and stuff. And it's like you guys literally help me with that stuff at every show. Because Phil's an idiot. Oh. So it's like a bone that holds this thing. Oh, there's the graveyard.
Ah,
Pot out at night.
yeah. I don't need to be on the big screen though. There we go.
You missed it, man. That it was a fun interview.
Yeah, spooky time of the month is very busy. So
yeah. The Jay, so he was a he used to be a Hollywood he is a Hollywood historian.
mm,
And I asked him, what is your favorite sci-fi movie?
uh-huh.
Try and guess what he said.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Nope.
Damn. Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Son of a bitch.
I was like, Matt's gonna show up, or Graveyard's gonna show up, and he's gonna absolutely hate you.
Oh, I can't hate my guest for next week or 2 weeks.
He's gonna be on your show in 2 weeks.
He is, yes.
You know what's funny is because I was telling him, I was like, yeah, so my other host, his name is Graveyard, and he goes, wait, his name is Graveyard? I was like, well, yeah, no, we don't tell people what his real name is, which I just slipped a second ago, but I mean,
You did.
yeah.
All right, roll. Sorry for my tardiness. It is the spookiest time of the year. Are we ready to get into the horror comedies bracket?
I am.
Awesome. So to give people a quick rundown, as we normally do, what we have for tonight's bracket and probably the next two brackets is horror comedies. And we had, Phil knows the behind the scenes discussion we had with what is part of this for sure. And Frey wanted Lost Boys on here. That is changed to be instead. What did I remove? I removed something for Frey. Anyway, so for examples, we have Tremors, Evil Dead 2, Bubba Hotep, Lisa Frankenstein, Bodies. My name is Bruce. What We Do in the Shadows, Gremlins, and all the spooky comedy stuff that exists. So are you ready to get into the first round of this bracket?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
All right. So very first up, we have Tremors versus Evil Dead 2. For the not the scariest, not the funniest, but best horror comedy movie that exists.
Oh,
Yes, Day Long Family cosplay, Tucker and Dale, is, of course, on this. Easily, Tucker and Dale versus Evil is on this list for sure.
Okay, so we are saying which one overall is the best movie.
Yes.
Okay, so I know which one you're voting for.
Anyone that says anything other than Evil Dead 2 is incorrect. Considering we have Tater and Say Wong saying Tremors is the better movie.
He's like, I hate you all.
Let's count the number of Tremors tattoos on my body. 0.
You don't have any graboids on you?
I have 0 graboids on me, yes. However, Evil Dead stuff is a whole other story.
Yeah, you've got that all over yourself.
I do. So yes, obviously my vote is for Evil Dead 2 because it is the better movie. I agree. I agree, Tater. The Ass Blasters is fantastic. Ass Blasters are not in the first Tremors movie.
Oh God. I'm probably going. So Evil Dead 2 was the remake of the first movie, right?
The first 5 minutes was a remake, a retelling of the first movie. Everything after that was original.
Yeah, I'm going Evil Dead.
Thank you.
I think overall the franchise, if we're talking like horror comedies, the franchise in general kind of like holds kind of a key on that. So
yeah,
like you're looking at a movie that is like a serious horror movie, but at the same time there are like very comedic elements, especially with your boy fucking Bruce.
Thank you, DeLong, for voting for Evil Dead. Everyone else is voting Tremors. Oh, chat, I love you and hate you at the same time.
What is it that we say all the time? Like, hey, yeah, you can have your opinion. It's a wrong opinion, but you can have it.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, Say Wong said that he has moments for Tremors, which wholeheartedly agree. I love Tremors as well. I love Tremors 2 more than Tremors 1, personally. Because it's definitely more comedic. I said I have no shame in my love of Bruce Campbell, so
none. We know this already.
Mm-hmm. And remember, if it wasn't for the comedy of Evil Dead 2, there would be no Spider-Man trilogy. There would be no Darkman. There would be no Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it is Sam Raimi, but still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I really put this on there just because Bruce Campbell had an interview last week or the week before. He's talking about why there's comedy in Evil Dead 2. It's because they got sick of people being upset and throwing up from the first Evil Dead. So they added comedy and slapstick into it.
Oh, by the way, our guest that was on Tuesday, we need to get him on your show, dude. He worked with Bruce Campbell on the film. He puts out horror comics. Yeah, man, dude is freaking awesome.
Who was it?
J Photos.
Name sounds familiar.
He did creature creation for I gotta pull it up again, but he did creature creation for one of Bruce Campbell's movies. He did creature creation for The Haunting of Hill House.
It sounds like he would have done it for either Bubba Hotep or My Name is Bruce.
No, it's neither of those. Let me pull it up real quick.
Bruce Campbell is the horror movie Ryan Reynolds. He is.
You see what he just put out this week about how he's guaranteed to have a bigger role in the next Doctor Strange movie.
He says that. When I talked to him about it in 2008, he didn't have anything to say about that, even though he was geared to be Mysterio.
Black Friday.
Yes.
He did the creature creation for Black Friday.
Ooh, yeah, I need him to have him on for sure. give him my information.
Oh, I will. I definitely will. Let me just give you like a quick synopsis of this dude, real quick here. All right.
Okay.
He was a colorist and artist on Spawn, Godzilla, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original 30 Days of Night, Beast Wars, Winona Earp, the Lock and Key comic book, and then he is doing the Image Comics 68. He was one of the artists on Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. And then he's done Image Comics for Dungeons and Dragons, Batman the Animated Series, TMNT Adventures, TMNT Munchkin, and then several IDW publishing games. He's done creature creation and creature concept designs for MUFX for Robert Kurtzman's MUFX. Haunting of Hill House, Black Friday. Let's see what else. He has two other comics right now. One called Rising Rebels, which is a love letter to 1980s horror movies. Yep, and he's got a series called Gorgon. So yeah, this was a Jackie find.
Like Gorgon, as in the Gorgon.
No, so it's a comic series he has called Gorgon.
Well, but off of Medusa, the Gorgon Medusa.
It's based on Medusa, dude. You got to see his concept art; it's so dope.
I need a change of pants. Yeah, I absolutely have him on just because I need the third person in my life to personally know that knows Bruce Campbell, so I'm one step closer. So
yeah, so he like I said, he's done so much work. He was one of the few dudes that worked with Frank Frazetta before he passed away. He told me a story off mic about Bruce Campbell and how funny Bruce Campbell is in real life. And I was like, yeah, no, let's save that for the actual podcast. He came on the show to promote his Kickstarter. And we're going to have him come on the show again to actually do like a more in-depth interview and talk about all the things that he's done. Because this dude is stupid interesting, man. Like all the stuff that he's done. He is a big. He was talking about how he's not much of a comic fan, but he's a massive horror fan.
Man.
So I kept saying, like, you need to talk to Graveyard. We need to get you on Conversations in the Void for sure. He was like, hell yeah, send him my information. So you'll get his information tonight.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I have to say right now, though, I am disappointed in chat with Tremors beating off Evil Dead 2 right out the gates.
Tremors beat Evil Dead right out of the bat.
Yeah.
This is your Darth Maul moment.
Well, I mean, if you're on Evil Dead, it's technically 3-3. Chat, if you're there, we heard from you, DeLong, Sandra, Tater, and Say Wong. We need one more vote. Because if it goes to a tiebreaker, I'm breaking the tie.
Yeah, I would ask Jack, but I don't think she's seen either of these movies.
I voted. Yes, you did. So here's my story for Evil Dead. You ready for it?
Yeah.
When I started dating my now wife, 20 some odd years ago, if she did not like the Evil Dead trilogy, it was done right then and there.
Right.
So
understandable.
That's my litmus test, right? So I'm just saying, Evil Dead 2 is easily the most slapstick horror comedy that ever existed. Without it, no other horror comedy could exist.
But I think just in general, we're talking about like if we're talking about best movie, like which one is the best franchise? I mean, obviously the chat has feelings for Tremors. If it's winning right now.
Yep, it is. Chat. Yep, they confirmed it.
Maybe it's not Tremors that they like, but it's Kevin Bacon.
I agree.
No, they're just like, we don't care about Tremors. We care that fucking They like Kevin Bacon more than they like Bruce Campbell.
Oh, chat. It's okay to be wrong. I'll let Bruce know when I talk to him next year how wrong you really are. All right. So I guess Tremors moving forward. Luckily, there's at least 2 other Bruce Campbell movies on here. So you don't think I'm loading this racket up? Come on. All right. Next up is The Menu. Did you watch that?
I did not. I ended up watching this, or not watching, but like reading a synopsis on it. So I'm familiar with the story and the twist.
Yes. Yes, Kevin Bacon's just a bonus. I can do 6 degrees of Bruce Campbell better than I can do 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Just throwing it out there. All right, so The Menu versus the now back to the bracket, The Burbs.
It's funny is we were just talking about the Birds. You missed a lot.
I was not in the state, so The Burbs, yes. The Burbs is
The Burbs.
Not The Birds. Burbs. Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks.
Burbs, Taylor, not Birds. That's not a comedy. So what say you, Phil?
The Burbs, or what was it?
The Menu.
Oh. We're talking comedies, man. I'm going The Burbs.
Mm-hmm.
The Menu, from what I understand, was a little bit more of a serious take.
It's a dark comedy.
Yeah.
When one of your actors in this is Angela from Who's the Boss, I'm just throwing it out there. No, it is a Yes Chef type show with, Hammerhead Shark herself. I can't think of her name. Magic, the witch. What's her name?
I don't remember.
From the New Mutants, right?
Oh yeah.
Last Night in Soho. Blanking on her name.
Yeah, same.
Oh, Anna Joy Taylor.
Anna Joy Taylor.
Yes. As Salem affectionately calls the Hammerhead, because her eyes are way too far apart for her face.
Oh my god. Salem and his nicknames, man, they're the greatest.
Oh, they are. They are. So right now it looks like The Burbs is winning just because it is, most people think, oh, that's Tom Hanks's first horror movie, right? But it's not.
No, Big was his first horror movie.
He was in a movie in 1980 that was actually a horror movie.
Really?
Yes, that was his first movie. I think it's while I was watching or something like that, but it was an actual legit horror movie.
It wasn't the House movies?
Oh, sorry. He Knows You're Alone, 1980. It was a full-on horror movie.
It wasn't the House movies?
No, those were.
Wait, are those on this list?
No.
Horror comedy?
I can't do those again. 1 and 3, I can definitely do. But other ones, I cannot.
All right. And I'm not saying to put it on the list, but I'm saying if any of those movies made it to this list, it would be the first one.
Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't know what the House franchise is, it stars the original Luke Skywalker. Before Mark Hamill got the role, it was given to the guy from Great American Hero, who was in the first House movie.
Greatest American Hero.
Yes. All right, so The Burbs is moving on. Next up, we have Freaky, which stars Vince Vaughn as. Have you seen that, Freaky?
I don't think so. Let me pull it up.
Catherine Newton-Jones, or Ant-Man's daughter, versus Vince Vaughn, and they switch bodies. So he's a serial killer who swaps bodies with a teenage girl.
Oh no, I never saw this one.
I highly suggest it if you want to see a Vince Vaughn slasher movie, but comedy and not psycho.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me he was in the Psycho remake.
Oh, trust me, I had to watch it, so I make sure everyone knows that it's a bad movie
Yeah, it's terrible.
and no one should watch it.
Fucking shot for shot remake of the original.
Mm-hmm. So, Freaky versus The Final Girls, which stars Adam. Why can't I think of his name? I'm blanking names. He was in Workaholics. Adam Levine.
Yeah.
Thomas Milsich. The original Silk Spectre from Watchmen. Maylene Ackerman. And essentially, it's about people transported into an 80s slasher movie.
Why the fuck haven't I watched this? This looks amazing.
It's great. And also, Vera Farmiga's younger sister, which I always assumed was her daughter, from American Horror Story.
Oh my god, I need to watch this.
You do, because it is fantastic. Just think of people in 2020 transported back to Friday the 13th and know it's a movie.
God, that sounds so good.
Yes. Yes, some of these obviously people may not have seen if you don't know much about horror comedies, but yeah, they're both really good. Taylor saying Freaky. I enjoy both of them just tremendously. For me to pick, though, I would have to say Freaky, to see Vince Vaughn play essentially Ant-Man's daughter in like a Freaky Friday situation.
That's funny, man. Just like it's seeing Vince Vaughn play a teenage girl.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great.
So between those two, Phil, which one would you rather see?
I think that's how I have to pick this: is which movie do I want to see more?
Yes.
So, do I want to see Vince Vaughn playing a teenage girl, or do I want to see a movie about a bunch of people being transported into a 1980s? Like, God, no, Final Girls is my pick on this.
Yeah.
I want to see both of them, right? Because like my issue is like the reason I'm picking one over the other is because Vince Vaughn playing a teenage girl would be funny,
Mm-hmm.
but a bunch of people from 2020 being transported into a 1980s slasher film, and it's a comedy.
Yes.
There's nothing. There's no flaw in that whatsoever.
Yeah. It is pure meta. Like they even know the credits are happening because the credits are on their screen that they're seeing, that they're living through. So they actually see the letters go through the sky.
Yeah, no, I gotta watch this movie.
You do.
It sounds fucking magical.
It really is. And you know, obviously me being a hardcore horror guy, I do and obviously enjoy comedies too. So that good comedy mix is just perfect for me. All right, so girls votes for DeLong and Sandra. Tater saying Freaky. Say Wong, if you're out there, I hope you're watching the trailers and picking, or just flipping a coin. That's okay, because right now we're tied. So say Wong. It's all up to you. All right, Phil, while we're in, say Wong saying Freaky. I got to ask, Phil, is that counter above the door, is that changeable? The days till Christmas?
No, it's not. It's a sticker. So,
oh,
that'd be cool if you could actually move that.
If it's like a countdown calendar to either Halloween or Christmas, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
I'm sure it's just like they pulled that from like the scene in the movie.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
All right. So Say Wong says Freaky. So Freaky is moving on. Next up, we have Totally Killer, which, if you haven't watched, it stars Kiernan Shipka or Sabrina the Teenage Witch from the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Never watched the show. I heard it was more horror than the original was, but
I mean, yes. I'm sorry that the Christian version of Melissa Joan Hart's show wasn't horror enough, but it wasn't. But she essentially stars as a girl who comes back, and that her in the past 40 years ago, because stranger things happen, so everyone has to go back to the 80s.
Yep.
That a killer happened back then, and they're transported through time into the past, and she's trying to stop the murders from happening, based off of a true crime podcast that existed of the serial killer that happened 40 years before. And that is versus Happy Death Day.
Happy Death Day.
Yes, because that is a black comedy.
Yeah, that movie is ridiculous. Where do I go on this one?
Let go. Don't fear the unknown. Heaven and hell. Don't speak.
Happy Death Day.
I mean, the third one is coming out, I think, next year, which is essentially Groundhog's Day meets a slasher.
Right.
So,
those fucking movies.
I mean, I'm personally going Happy Death Day.
What was the other one?
Totally Killer, which is, like I said, just someone transporting back through time through essentially a vintage photo booth machine to go off of a true crime podcast that's happening now to try to prevent the murders of her mom's friends that happened. So they both kind of deal with time loops for the most part.
Yeah. Gotta go with Happy Death Day.
Yeah. Don't watch Happy Death Day 2 if you haven't watched it.
Don't watch Happy Death Day 2?
No. It kind of ruins the mystery. Like, if there's a Groundhog's Day 2 and you find out why Bill Murray was stuck in Groundhog's Day.
That sucks.
Yeah.
They're just like, hey, we're just going to ruin the fucking surprise here.
They go a very sci-fi route for it.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. There is a quantum entanglement explanation for it.
God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a decent movie, but it just kind of ruins the plot to me. Like, you don't need to know why things are happening. It's better to not know why things are happening. That's what makes Groundhog's Day so good. Is he's like, he's stuck there for how long? Is it 1,000 years that Harold Ramis said it was, or is it for 100 years? You never know.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, Happy Death Day is moving on.
Happy Death Day.
All right. Next up. All right, chat. This is your chance to redeem yourself.
They're not going to.
I know. It is Lisa Frankenstein. Have you seen that?
Lisa Frankenstein.
Yes.
Sounds familiar.
It's What If Twilight, but Frankenstein.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
When did that come out?
Last year or earlier this year.
Oh, I definitely haven't watched it then.
No, it's new. Also stars Ant-Man's daughter.
What the fuck? She's in all these fucking horror comedy movies.
She is. She's trying to be a thing. And stop trying to make it a thing. Versus a black JFK and elderly Elvis Presley in Bubba Hotep.
Bubba Hotep for sure. As soon as you said black JFK and elderly Elvis, I was like, Bubba Hotep, Bubba Hotep.
Yep.
Bubba Hotep is that every time.
Oh, easily.
Fucking movie is amazing.
easily beats out Lisa Frankenstein in my book too.
Yeah, no. Bubba Hotep is one of the best horror comedies, especially when the fucking when the mummy shows up.
Yeah. I mean, what other movie do you have? A guy, that's playing JFK, but after he's assassinated, was died to be hidden from the public. Bubba Hotep is just phenomenal.
Some of the most ridiculous fucking storylines, and I love it.
And I gotta say that Bruce Campbell did play a pretty convincing Elvis Presley.
He did. His Elvis was actually really good.
Yeah. The question is, was he better than Kurt Russell? What do you think?
Was Bruce Campbell better than Kurt Russell as Elvis Presley?
Yeah.
I gotta go rewatch them side by side. I know you would say Bruce Campbell, but I mean, I actually objectively have to look at it.
Oh, I mean, Kurt Russell did a phenomenal job too. I think it's a hard character to get right, but especially as Bruce is playing the older Elvis, right, with the hand motions and everything like that,
Yeah.
he nails it perfectly.
I'm sorry, son.
Exactly. All right. Well, all chat is also saying Bubba Hotep. So thank you, chat, for letting his movie move forward. Unfortunately, next up we have My Name is Bruce, which is, I don't know how chat's going to feel about it, him playing himself satirically, versus the wonderful Pete Davidson movie Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Never saw that one either.
Don't. It's awful. If you want the TLDR of Bodies, 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 it's where they play a game called Bodies, 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 and one of them pretends to be dead, and everyone else has to figure out who the murderer is. So it's like The Werewolf Within, but with Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It also stars Pete Davidson, so there's that.
I don't have a problem with Pete Davidson. As much as people will hate on him, I don't have an issue with Pete Davidson.
Did you watch the honest trailers for Beetlejuice?
I have not. I'll probably watch that after the show tonight.
You do. Essentially, as the epic voice guy says, Beetlejuice is Pete Davidson in 10 years.
Beetlejuice as Pete Davidson in 10 years.
Exactly.
Pretty funny.
Hey, look, James is in the chat. Awfully good. So, James, what is the best horror comedy version episode of Bluey? Please let us know.
He will tell us too.
You would. Bodies, say, I want to say Bodies, Bodies, Bodies was so bad it became good in a very cliche, cheesy way.
No.
Yes, no.
Remember, you're talking to the guy who likes bad movies, so I mean.
So what made 80s horror movies so cheesy but good is because they were taking themselves very seriously. They weren't trying to be cheesy. Because of Sharknado, we had a whole slew of movies that came out like, we're so bad, it's good, when you're just trying too hard.
I was going to say, like House 2.
Yes.
It's a movie that really took itself seriously and ended up being absolutely fucking terrible.
Yeah. And spoiler alert for the Clowns episode we just released last night. Salem goes, who's that old guy that plays an old Southern guy in Killer Clowns from Outer Space? I go, well, that's Gramps from House 2. So you watched him in 2 movies this month. He let me know how much he hates me for that.
I have not listened to the latest episode yet. It's on my queue because I have like one podcast ahead of it right now.
James is saying Terrifier is the best horror comedy.
He's never seen Terrifier. I take it.
I mean, maybe Art the Clown's next to the Bluey costume in Spirit Halloween.
Oh my god. Art the Clown is fucking terrifying, hence the name Terrifier.
Oh, you'll hear all our thoughts of Terrifier next week. Don't worry.
At least the first movie was trying to be like serious.
Yeah.
Before it became like, oh, now it's just become horror porn.
Yes.
You know.
Oh, I agree with you, James. Killer Clowns is a classic. However, I'll give you a brief spoiler here. It is Salem's lowest rated movie of all time.
Really?
Yes. He never saw it until this week.
I would have never expected that to be his lowest rated film.
It's his lowest rated. It is the biggest spread of ratings that we've had for a movie between the two of us.
So did he rate it like a 0.1 or something like that?
I wish. 0.000001.
Oh my god, I can't wait to listen to the episode.
He gives a description for it too, which is just absolutely amazing.
I'm actually probably gonna skip my other podcasts and literally fucking like listen to that tomorrow morning on my way to work.
It hurt me. It really hurt me.
Yeah, I've got a long drive tomorrow. I'm driving to Orville tomorrow, so I'm definitely gonna listen to that.
Yeah. So far, my name is Bruce is winning. So I think that's what we'll call it. How many steps you got left on your step of your Lego?
Where are we at on time? Oh my god. Yeah, let me just finish this last piece right here. I've got a good amount of steps still left, so I'm gonna build this like half of the ceiling, and then we'll stop for till next week.
Sweet. But yes, James, I completely agree. Killer Clowns is a classic. And when I have our guest from last week on my show on Sunday, because he's already scheduled for me, Mario.
Nice. Are you Mario Garay?
Yep.
Yeah, my boy. Have you played the game?
I have not.
Okay, so they made an asymmetrical
Mhm.
game, right? I think what we'll need to do is figure out a night where basically we just play that game and
Yes.
kind of just like get through that, especially like for spooky season right now. Now's the time for us to play that game on stream.
Oh, yeah. You remember how he corrected about the Jones brothers and his conversation with them and the mask and not being Ernest Scared Stupid?
Yeah,
It was.
they were.
Two of them were, yes.
Yeah.
So I watched. There was a whole documentary behind it that two of the masks were in fact used for Ernest Scared Stupid.
That's funny.
By Bloody Disgusting. So just for fun, I'm gonna have to talk to Mario about that on Sunday.
All right.
Rebel Rising J Photos, was he on the Void? No.
So that's who I was talking about. Jay Photos, who was on the show on Tuesday. I'm gonna give you his information tonight, so that way you guys can get him booked, because definitely need to have him on your show. He would fit perfectly.
Yeah. I almost got to meet Jeff Daniel Phillips on Tuesday.
What?
Yeah. Just because some people had a movie premiere of his in Chicago that was divided too. So
Go drive to New York, man. Go to New York Comic Con. They're all there.
I know. But work unfortunately screwed me over from being able to meet the second person, part of the Rob Zombie universe, that I would potentially possibly know personally. So
God damn it, work!
Yes. I hope to in a month and 5 days. really a month and 7 days, I guess.
Damn you, responsibilities!
Yeah, go meet Bill Mosley. So
Oh wow. Okay, so real quick, guys, before we finish this up, because I'm going to show everybody some of this progress, some of the little Easter eggs on this.
Ooh.
Lego's really good about like putting Easter eggs all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, right, you see it's the city hall clock tower office and all that, right? The sides come down and whatnot, and you can kind of see like the inside of this. But what's really cool about this is this whole top piece comes off, like a little Christmas scene.
Oh.
All right. That's kind of cool. Now check this out. As I put this back on. So I'm building the roof right now, right? So the roof is going to go on top of the little clock tower right there, right?
Yes.
But these pieces come off, again, the Christmas scene.
Huh.
Christmas presents. And so I like that they're like throwing around like all these little Easter eggs like all around this thing.
Interesting. Now, do you think that the clock above the mayor's office is reminiscent and homage to the clock in front of town hall and Back to the Future?
I want to say that they did say that they like that was one of the things that they built around this when they built it in the thing in the movie. It's supposed to be based on the clock tower.
Is that lock, stock, and barrel there in the walking bathtub?
It is lock, stock, and barrel in the walking back the bathtub. So Friday, when I started building this, so I've got the mayor, right, and it's great because the mayor can change his expressions.
His head turns.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Oh, Jack. Right. And then lock, stock.
I'm not going to lie. If I looked at those, I would have said Pyro, Joker, and Agatha.
Pyro, Joker, and Agatha. And then, of course, kidnap the Santa Claus.
Sandy Claus.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If Disney wasn't going to take us down for doing it, I would play the corn version of Kidnap the Santa Claus when I'm done with this. But we'll probably get a DMCA takedown.
Probably.
Yeah. So we will continue this guy next week. Let me switch here. What? Switching microphones. Switching cameras.
Ooh.
I know, so fancy.
It is.
Wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue tomorrow. I'm going to continue building here. I do not believe Graveyard will be with me, but we will be figuring out who will be with me tomorrow.
It's possible.
If you do make it tomorrow, that's awesome because it's only an hour long. So
okay,
shorter show. We don't do the brackets on the Friday one. We just do the interview and we're out. But tomorrow we're going to be talking with Reynard RJ Pilosak. Palisak. Sorry. He is. Did you shout out Jackie for that set? I got to shout out Jackie for my life. But Mark Nassal from I've got his business card over here. He's been on the show before.
Okay.
From Diwata Comics, right?
Oh yeah.
This is one of their new artists.
Okay.
And he's got a book coming out. So he actually just sent me the book, which I'm going to be sending to you here in a minute.
Sweet.
But, tomorrow we'll be talking to him. This is his first interview, so guys, be gentle. Right,
lube up. Just ease it on in.
Just ease it in. Just be as easy as possible.
And Sandra, Sinister Creature Con this weekend. Sandra, if you meet any good, interesting people, head them on over to my information. Have them on not only this show, but also Conversations in the Void.
Right. Yeah, James, that's who we ran into at LA Comic Con. So he's scheduled for tomorrow. So we'll be on tomorrow. We'll be talking about his new book. Again, I'll get about an hour of the build-in tomorrow, and we'll be focusing more on the interview than anything else. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from us this week. It is now time for the dance party. We will see everybody next week or tomorrow. I'm so used to saying we'll see everybody next week. We will see everybody tomorrow, same time, same bat channel, distancenerding.com. You're like, wait, this is all new. I don't know any of this shit. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you guys tomorrow. It is time to get it up. Will the towel show up? I don't know. James, are you going to be on the show tomorrow? Like a towel flapping in the wind. All right, let's get this done. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the dance party. Let's go. Nintendo.
He just came in today.
Nice.
Distance nerding.
Eddie, I have a PG-13 movie.
Eddie, I am making a movie that's not scary or rated R.
I will kill them all by myself.
The only thing I'm killing is my franchise. Oh no! I knocked off an eyebrow. Hold on.
Oh no!
I'll switch. All right. The better character, the shittier movie. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Oh, wait, what am I doing? This one.